Okay. All right. Well, hey, thank you everyone for joining us for this special, Prep in the Press event where we'll be talking about the upcoming vice presidential debate that is going to be at the University of Utah on Wednesday, October 7th. And we're going to talk a lot about what to expect. And this is a pretty unique event. And for Utah journalists, might not be used to something like this, so we're hoping that this is going to be a good primer for you, get you ready, know what to expect, and ready to cover this very historic event. My name is Eric Peterson. I'm the president of the board of the Utah Headliners chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists. We do a lot of events like this. We're very invested in providing training and development for local journalists and helping them out in any way that we can. We're an organization that also advocates for all the journalists in the state. If you're ever interested in learning more about us, you can get in touch with us through our Facebook, facebook.com/UtahSBJ. We have a website, utahsbj.com. We're redoing that website soon. Would love to have you help out if you're interested to become a member. Any of the board members can talk to you about that. But we're going to get started with this event, and I'm very excited to introduce our panelists. To help us out today with this webinar, we have Lindsay Whitehurst, and she covers national news for the Associated Press in Utah. She writes about politics from county to Congress, from the Salt Lake City Bureau. She's been covering debates of all kinds for more than a decade during a career that's also includes stops in Indiana and New Mexico. We're also joined by Liz Adeola. She's an Emmy Award-winning journalist at PBS Utah. Her work has appeared on ABC News, CNN, and PBS NewsHour Weekend. Liz spent more than a decade producing, reporting, and anchoring at NBC, ABC, and CBS affiliates across the country. She's a proud graduate of the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and also has a Master of Science in Communication with dual concentrations of advertising and public relations from the Lamb School of Communication at Purdue. Liz covered the last two presidential elections, reporting in Indianapolis on Mike Pence's road to the White House, Senator Ted Cruz campaigning in Indiana, and former President Barack Obama's reelection from the Ohio State House. Thank you, our panelists, for helping us out with this event today. And I think we'll just get started. I'd just like the panelists to kind of start off talking a little bit more about their experience. I know Liz, I think a lot of people would be curious too about, covering, Mike Pence in the past. But maybe just start out talking about kind of covering these types of events, what to expect, and, how you found it is a good way to cover these events. I'm sorry, I also forgot to mention, we're also joined by Sean Wood. My apologies, Sean. Sean is with the University of Utah, and so he's also going to be kind of like our go-to expert, technical questions about the event itself. And apologies again, I should explain too more to those joining us, our attendees. You've got the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to throw questions in there. I'm going to be checking on those, and then I'll be directing those to our panelists after they kind of give a little more introduction about their experience in this field. So, just talking about your previous experience and what to expect. Do you want to start us out, Lindsay?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So I've covered more debates than I care to remember, that I can count over the years, and of course they're all a little different, but the formats are all similar until last night, right? Or until Monday night, anyway. And one thing that I've found with debates is they're almost always just a fire hose of information. It's just a lot coming at you as a reporter, and for me, I think one thing that kind of changed my debate coverage life is doing a ton of prep work and even pre-writing a lot of stuff, you know, especially background that we already know. You can write up all that stuff and that way it's ready to go. And that really helps on deadlines. So you're not scrambling to figure out, wait, what year was Kamala Harris elected again? And that really helps a lot to even pre-write a lot of stuff and do as much prep work as you can, you know, decide what you're going to cover, decide what your priorities are going to be. And that can really, I think, help you sort through some of the noise at deadline. So that's one of the big themes for me on all of this.
Liz?
All right, I'll jump in here. So my experience with presidential debates has been slightly different. I worked at my very first presidential debate was at Arizona State University, and I was a production assistant for Eurovision. And so I was pretty much just tossed into the throng of all the excitement and all the buzz and all the craziness and insanity, and it was huge. And I know that this year, especially with the debates and COVID happening at the same time, colliding at the same time, things are going to be different, and people will have to take a different way of tackling these events. It's still huge events that need coverage, but it'll have to be covered in a different way. And so after graduation, when I became a professional journalist working in Columbus, Ohio and Indianapolis, I would do general assignment reports on the debates. They weren't held in those areas at the same time, but I would do like the local coverage of it and cover watch parties and pretty much what the public their response to what they saw during the debate. And I agree with Lindsay. It takes a lot of preparation beforehand so that you're not scrambling, you're not having to look and study things, you know, right then and there. Oh, they said this, you can fact check it yourself. And I think that is a big change today as well, is that you have to do a lot of your own fact checking, and you can't really rely on what the candidates said. Unfortunately, you have to do that fact checking and know that information beforehand and study up before you get to the debate and that night of coverage.
And you know, for both our panelists, I was kind of curious, like, what should we like expect specifically with these candidates? I mean, I feel like given the kind of the dumpster fire that was that first presidential debate, I feel like people are probably going to go into this shell shocked, even if, you know, it's two completely different people. I mean, we're not expecting anything like that. And maybe, Liz, I don't know, with some of your coverage of Mike Pence, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you've seen in him in debates.
It's way more laid back than what we saw. I think it's going to be a lot of a cleanup kind of process that we're going to hear at this upcoming debate. They're going to try and bring things back to what we've seen before in the past, and kind of the reverence of vice presidential debates and presidential debates. I think we're going to see something that is a more along the lines of what we've seen in years before. And I also think they're going to back, you know, who they're running with, and they're going to try to backtrack a lot of the misspoken information that was put out during that last debate.
And I think that's one role that Mike Pence has long played, right, with Donald Trump. Like he almost tries to balance him out a little bit and soften him up a little. And I think we see that a lot in Utah in particular. I think Utah voters, for the most part, generally, a lot of them tend to shy away from President Trump a little bit. So you have a guy like Pence that comes in who's a little bit more of a traditional conservative candidate who can kind of attempt at least to smooth some feathers. And of course, the other thing I think a lot of people will be watching for in this debate is Kamala Harris, right? I mean, she's kind of the rising star on that ticket. That if Joe Biden was sort of the consensus candidate everybody could kind of agree on in the Democratic Party, or at least get behind, she's the one that people are going to really watch for you know, any the kind of breakout moments she had during some of the Democratic debates, but then also, you know, eyeing her for what might a vice president Harris look like, and where's her career kind of going to.
You know, I've seen some questions come up in the chat and the Q&A. And I don't know if Sean, if you would care to address them. Some people have been asking, like, is it still possible to get tickets? What is that situation like? My guess is probably not looking good, but I'd like to hear what Sean has to say about that. And Sean, while you're coming back with that answer, Lindsay and Liz, maybe that's something to think about too in this situation. In a normal debate setting, a lot of what you do would be talking to people in the crowd to see what people think about this, and in this event there's going to be probably a limited amount of people that can actually even attend and see it in person. So I think there's another question for people out there is like, what are different ways to cover this beyond just observing the debate, whether that's digitally. How are they going to find people to like talk to and get reactions? Like what kind of things do you think are good ways to approach that in our continually unprecedented COVID era? Lindsay, you go first?
Sure. Yeah, I think that the media that will be on site will be more limited than in years past. I want to say Sean can help out and jump in here, but I want to say it's about 200 reporters. When you're talking about, of course, a nationally and even international event, that's not a huge number, So it'll be a little more toned down than in years past in terms of the media around it, for obvious reasons, right? And so I think it's both a challenge, and it's also kind of exciting to get to look for some of those perspectives we don't always see. I think that we're in a stage now where you can get back to some semblance of normalcy in terms of finding and interviewing people. Once you have your mask on and you have all your protective gear, your hand sanitizer and all that stuff, you can start to do the kind of man on the street interviews. And but probably, we were talking about watch parties, Liz, in years past, probably most of those are going to be out now, right? So I think that's another area where we'll be probably, needing to do more prep work and set some groundwork and even reach out to people ahead of time. I've done this in the past too. Identify your people ahead of time and say, hey, are you watching the debate? Would you like to talk to me? And then you've got somebody who you can talk to right after if you'd like, or even, you can always come back the next day and find people too. But it's kind of, and I think especially now, the kinds of conversations we've been having about racial justice and stuff like that, I'm hoping that this will be a season where we're out as reporters finding perspectives that we don't always find, and hearing from lots of different voices.
And I think people are really into watching and really excited about watching. I saw more bingo boards for the last presidential debate going out on social media than I had ever seen in any other debate. So I think people are really excited and they want to talk about what they're seeing, and they're out there. The new watch party might just be social media, the gift and the curse, unfortunately. But yeah.
True story.
Yeah, that's I noticed. I think Broovies was showing that. I think it showed the last presidential debate. Would have been fun. Someone had a question about. Can you guys talk about what this debate means for Utah? Does it put us on the map? Does it or does it mostly serve to elevate the profile of the university?
You feel free to start off on that one, Liz.
I think it does both. I think it puts Utah on the map, and it'll have people talking about Utah, and it'll also elevate the profile of the university as well. PBS Utah is on the campus of the University of Utah, so we are really excited about it. And we've been preparing for this for months and months and months, if not years. And so I think it's bringing a level of excitement to that area. If you've driven by campus, you've seen everything set up. And I think it's going to be really good for the state of Utah.
Yeah, I think Utah, we sometimes feel perhaps not like we don't get as much attention during presidential seasons because it tends to be a pretty safe Republican state. And so yeah, it's definitely something that I think is exciting, and hopefully we'll get people really engaged. I mean, I think, like you said, Liz, I think people are definitely watching anyway. And I think people might be kind of hoping that we get a little bit more of sort of a back and forth, you know what I mean? A back and forth of ideas and stuff like that out of this debate. So yeah, I think a lot of eyes will turn here, and I think it'll be cool. It'll be exciting.
kind of want to like revisit the idea of like fact checking, because witnessing the presidential debate, that the amount of noise and claims made really seem quite intimidating. I don't know, like we've kind of talked a little bit about kind of doing your homework before going into something, but maybe we could drill down on that a little bit more. I mean, like, how do you kind of like, you try and prepare to kind of just based on what issues are coming up to be able to like refer to specifics, and in for example, to follow up with that, like in the kind of the initial night's coverage, how much fact checking should you do? How much can you do? And what is the appropriate amount, of coverage to give to a candidate, say, in that first night? I know there's always going to be a pressure to like get your story out, but when people start saying things on the fly really quickly, it must make for a challenging environment for like making sure that what you report on is actually verifiable or not. I don't know if you want to talk more about that, Lindsay. Just really just more about how you prepare on that end for fact checking and how you do it.
Yeah, and this is, I think, one of the great challenges of our time in media, right? It's not just the debate. It's almost every day we're trying to do this. And of course, one big thing you can do is if you identified, especially if you've identified those issues that you want to focus on, like you're one human or hopefully several humans who are covering this, right? But you can't do everything. And so I think if you decide what your priorities are, whether they're sort of specific issues that you're looking for, whether there's certain, breakaway moments that you're looking for, I think that can really help. And then you can do a little bit of research background to get on those topics. Of course, you're also a person, and you're not necessarily going to find every single and reference every single fact that the candidate is going to say. We have the Google machines, which do make our jobs a little bit easier here, but I think for one, it's sometimes you need to make sure and attribute these things. And if you know ahead of time, this is something that's been said before, and that I believe in the presidential debate on Monday, there were a lot of things that had been said before. So you can kind of go back and give in real time, at least the context of this. This is, no, it's actually this, and then you can pair those two things together. So hopefully you're not just sort of repeating and amplifying stuff that might be misinformation, because these days sometimes a certain amount of misinformation is also news, right? And you can't not report on it, but you can give that context at the same time now. So that's one thing too, is having that background and going back, and because a lot of the candidates are sort of repeating lines that they've said before. It's not always all brand new. But if you don't feel like you can fact check it, you can also put that in context, put it in quotes, and just make that clear to people, be honest.
Liz?
And Lindsay, I totally agree with what you said. And I also think that narrowing down your focus of what you're covering at the debate, if possible, if you have a team of people that can cover different elements, that also helps for your audience, who you're writing for, or if it's for television, who you're reporting for, that helps you connect with that audience and say, this is what they care about, this is what they want to know about. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to focus on that area and make sure that I've done all the homework and I know all the information. So if they say something that seems out of bounds or doesn't seem right, I can instantly, go to my sheets, go to my notes that I've compiled and see if that's right or not. And then double check that with at least 2 other sources before reporting it or before proceeding forward and calling it out for not being true.
And so, on that note, what do you guys expect is some of the the burning issues that are likely going to be discussed at this debate, and some areas that people should be prepping for right now?
I'll let you start on this one, Liz.
Oh, okay. Well, definitely COVID and the response to that, definitely businesses being shut down, the reopening of communities and states and people getting back to work. I think people will also focus on what Kamala Harris has done, as her job in California, and they'll focus on that record as well. And she'll have some things to answer about that. They'll focus on Pence and definitely the Supreme Court nomination and what's going to be going on with that. But yeah, there'll be a lot of things. Lindsay, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was going to say Supreme Court, coronavirus, that those responses. I'm thinking also about I think Harris's big breakout during the Democratic debates was about busing and segregation. So I think she's got a lot of important stuff to say on race. And of course, the Republicans have very much come out with this law and order kind of message, sort of implied that there's a lot of violence in cities that's linked to the protest, which the data doesn't really back up. But yeah, so I think that the protest and that kind of message, it'll be interesting to see on that, because of course she's a former prosecutor, right? She knows from criminal justice, and she's actually had some attacks from the left that when she was a prosecutor, perhaps she was, questioning some of her tactics there. So I think that'll be really interesting, because the woman definitely is an expert on that, and that's something that the Republicans have made a big theme. So I'm interested to see if they kind of go toe to toe on those issues too.
And it'll also be interesting because at the same time, while Kamala will be answering or responding to that, Pence will have to answer about women's rights and where he stands on that with this Supreme Court appointee or nomination. It'll be really interesting to see them go back and forth about these issues.
Yeah, and of course Roe v. Wade is in the background of all of those Supreme Court conversations. So yeah, that'll be an interesting one too. I think they did kind of talk about that on Monday, but things got so sort of lost in the noise. Packing the Supreme Court, that question, like Biden did at least get a chance to answer on that, even if he didn't really give an answer. He kind of dodged it. So it'll be interesting to see if those kinds of things come up too.
Yeah, I kind of want to revisit that subject. I mean, it's an interesting thing to be looking out for in debates, is the kind of the artful dodge of the tough question. Before we get right to that, now we got Sean back. I wanted to see if you could help out some of our attendees who've just been asking some basic questions about the event, and wanting to know if it's still possible to get tickets to get in. If not, like, what's the best way to watch it, take part in this event?
Yeah, so sorry for my technical issues. Things are still being worked out. So, so tickets. This is the hottest ticket in town right now. Because, can you hear me okay? Sorry, just before I get too far into this. All right. So this is the hottest ticket in town. In the process of getting the debate, we were hoping for a presidential, but now we're very, very excited that we have the opportunity to host the vice presidential debate. So tickets, no, that is closely protected by the Commission on Presidential Debates, the organizing body. And as the host institution, we do get a pool of tickets. We still don't know how many those are, but it was decided by our president and the steering committee that those tickets would be going to our University of Utah students. So on Monday, we sent out communications for a portal to be open, and it was open on Tuesday from 8 to 5, and we had like 4,200 students apply for a ticket. So we're moving on to the next phase. Again, we don't know how many those are. That was tickets. Is there anything else you'd like to know?
Can I ask a quick question? Was that a random drawing, like all those 4,000 people? And was that like a random drawing, or how'd they do that? How did you do that?
No, so we sent out an email that says we have a portal, and we wanted to give people time and enough notice to participate. So the email went out on Monday, and it said, here is the link. This will open on Tuesday from 8 until 5. And then we sent another email on Tuesday morning and said, apply now. And that 4,000 number is how many students, currently enrolled students, it went to every currently enrolled student seeking 4 credit classes. Not 4 credit, but like 4 credit classes. And so that was just the response that we had in the time that it was open.
I have a question about, I know you guys had volunteers, and that was another way for people in the community to get involved. Is it too late for people to volunteer?
Yeah, so for that one, we knew that with COVID, everything has had to shrink with this. So back to the tickets for just 1 second. You know, we were planning on having more like a total of 900 tickets or seats in the debate hall. But everybody has to be appropriately social distance. So that number has shrunk down to probably closer to 200. And the university will get a small portion of that, of those 200 tickets. So with the volunteers, we knew that again, our footprint has to be smaller to protect everybody. So we knew that we would only need about 300 students, and we were gonna leave it open for about 5 days or something like that. And we had over 900 people apply in the first day and a half, or 2 days and a half. And so we had to close it down after that, just because it just wasn't fair to leave something like that open when we knew that there wasn't a chance for it. But we did want, with the tickets, we wanted everybody to know with as much notice as possible to be able to apply.
And Sean, there's also a question about press passes and student press passes. Are those still available, or have those been decided upon, or what's the situation with those?
So I realize I didn't fully round out the answer to that question. So the volunteer opportunities are also closed. We have a full contingent of volunteers. I think we're at either 250 or 300. So no more volunteer opportunities. The credentialing within the security perimeter is also controlled by the Commission on Presidential Debates. So they opened it up to media. We, as the University of Utah, we held a press conference in mid-July and contacted all of the media directors of all of the public stations and said, hey, we're having this event. If you're interested in participating, let us know and we'll get you on the Zoom information. And then said, here's the link to apply for that. So those had to be done several months ago. To get into the interior security perimeter, you had to fill out a Secret Service credential form, giving your date of birth, your social security number, your firstborn child, to make sure that everybody is safe and sound in that debate. I see that somebody says SLCC did not get the invite. So we didn't invite student media to that event because we knew that students were not going to be invited into the security perimeter, and that was a decision made by the Commission on Presidential Debates, not by the University of Utah. We really do not have control over any of that. However, I did send an email to somebody at the SLCC student paper probably 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, and we've set up a secondary media filing center for our student partners across the state. So everywhere from Dixie all the way to USU, all of the student papers, either the advisor or the editor-in-chief, if the information was correct on your website, receive that information. So I would check back with those people to see if you want to be included. We still have space in that area. So my email is Shawn, SHAWN .wood@utah.edu. Just reach out and we can get, we'll see what we can do.
Great. Thank you for that. And that's very useful. I know this is quite the logistical thing, quite the production going on here. So I want to kind of go back to that, something that we just kind of brought up a little while ago about, there was this situation, the presidential debate, where that question about, Wallace was really trying to kind of corner Biden on, the idea of, packing the Supreme Court, increasing it. And, Biden sort of answered it. And, of course, President Trump also sort of answered a lot of tough questions as well. What other kind of things like that, should, people who are new to covering a debate be looking for? And when thinking of that too, I'm also curious about kind of those aspects of the debate that, it's less about the policies and the talking points that come out, and more about, the actual event, the demeanor, the way things happen. Obviously with the presidential debate, things were just pretty intense and, rude at times. How much of your reporting should also be kind of looking at how the candidates are with each other, you know, the body language, that, you know, the demeanor, you know, how much of that goes into it, how do they respond to questions and things like that. Liz, you want to start?
You might see my little news gathering partner back here. So, but I would say, to me, that becomes like, that does become part of the story. How big of a part of a story depends a little bit on what it is, right? Like, it was a Monday night, it was a huge part of the story, and other times, like in the governor's debate the same night, not as much, right? Because it was pretty civil. It was a pretty, so I think it's still worth kind of like taking a mental zoom out, a sort of medium zoom image maybe of what's the overall tenor here. What's the kind of feeling in the room? How are these two people interacting with each other? I feel like it's always good to have that in your notebook. Depending on what else is happening, it may or may not make it into your story, honestly. It may become the story like it did Monday, or it might just kind of be like, oh, that was interesting, but actually these other facts are higher up, they're more important. And so yeah, I think that tenor and that energy, as much as you can, is totally worth observing and noting. And then of course there's also sort of the verbal sparring too, right? That how are these two people verbally interacting, and what does that kind of say about their thinking and their thought process as leaders, right? And then, you know, there's that other layer of like, are they stating a fact, or are they dodging the question? And is that dodge an answer in and of itself? You know what I mean? That Biden is not saying he won't pack the Supreme Court right now. That's, and of course there was the Proud Boys moment, right? Where President Trump is not going to take the opportunity to denounce white supremacy. So when they're not answering, of course, that also can be very much the story. That moment with the Proud Boys, we spun off and did our own story, like a lot of people did. So yeah, that dodge can be both the rhetorical tool and the story in and of itself.
And I think it's a good angle when it's warranted. And this week it was definitely warranted. One of the best pieces I saw, it went back through all of the years of the presidential debates that had these defining moments. And it kind of almost compared and contrasted the things that really like blew people's minds and made them think like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. And comparing that to what happened this week, it was just amazing to see like how it has changed through the years and just what a leap the debates took. And now people are even asking, should we still have the presidential debates? Are they still needed? And I think that is an important discussion to dive into with our coverage, and an important conversation to have.
I had a question that popped up in the chat that would be good for Sean. Somebody had asked, as a student photographer, we won't be able to get into the actual inside to photograph the debate, just the outside area? If you could address that.
Yeah, again, this is one of those changes made because of COVID. So in the past, at a debate like this, members of the media were allowed to go into the debate hall kind of in shifts and get their B-roll, still photography, things like that ahead of the debate. That's no longer possible, and the debate is pretty much close to critical personnel only, setting up stages, lighting, photography, things like that. And so what each venue has been asked to do on behalf of the media is our internal video and photography team that's inside, embedded in marketing and communications office, is to provide these assets on behalf of everybody. So we've put together an editorial calendar and a shot list that we'll be getting every single day. And as of I want to say the 3rd, which I think is Sunday, that information will be shared with anybody on our media list. So if anybody would like to be on that list, please either facilitate that through Eric or through Jean, and they will send your emails to me. I'm a little overwhelmed with emails, so don't send me emails separately, please. But every day we have interviews with our own faculty, staff, leadership, student leaders, student volunteers, members of the Commission for Presidential Debate, and B-roll, aerial shots, drone shots, still photography, And every day we will send out an email at, I think, 1:30 with these resources saying these are open and approved to use for your reporting purposes. So if anybody on this call needs those resources or would like to, just receive that email, that's fine. But no, student photographers will not be allowed inside the security perimeter, mainly because you need that security credential. So at this student filing center, it's probably about a 5-minute walk away. I know that sounds a lot, but it's not really that bad. It's in a different location with fellow reporters, and you'll be getting these resources. And where possible, we'll be interviewing these people for these daily drops, but then bringing them over to the Student Media Filing Center so you can at least get like an in-person interview experience. Depending on the timing in the day, that may not be possible, but that's our goal, to try to service as many people as we can.
And Sean had another question come up in the chat. I think maybe you probably best to talk about this. If you can tell us more about Susan Page, the moderator, and what her role, what her moderating role will be like in this debate, if you can address that.
So again, there's a distinct separation between the Commission for Presidential Debates and the University of Utah. So we are working together, but the commission is the organizer. They are the ones who choose the moderator. One of the assets that you'll see in those daily drops is a video explaining what the CPD is and how they choose the moderators. So the CPD chose Susan Page as well as the others. And we, the University of Utah, do not have any contact with the moderator whatsoever. We cannot, you may have seen this in the news that we've done a student essay contest through the Tribune and the Deseret News. Those essay contests will be submitted or be published in those outlets. And there was I wouldn't say promise, but there was the opportunity that your essay, if you were a winner, could be submitted to the moderator for a possible question. We do not know if that's going to happen. That is our pie in the sky hope. And that is going to be controlled by yet another entity, the Utah Debate Commission. So they are handling that aspect so that there's this separation between the university and these entities so that there isn't a perception that we are skewing things in any way.
Good. Also, another interesting question, good for our panelists, Liz and Lindsay. Well, what is your take on live tweeting the debate? Is that something that every organization should be doing, or can it get in the way of like really focusing on what's going on and producing quality copy at the end of the night?
I think in the modern media landscape, as a news organization, it's probably something every organization should seriously consider, if not do. I don't know if every reporter needs to do it though. And there are some reporters who are really good. We actually have a really good like media Twitter presence in Utah, like even compared to other markets of similar size, we really do a great job with that. I think our reporters do a terrific job. And I do think when I've done it at times there, if you're doing that, you can't always be as focused on what's happening in front of you. And that's just kind of a fact, but like we multitask as journalists, it's totally doable. But I would say that if you have the staffing for it, it's nice to have somebody who's just live tweeting, and then your reporters can focus on taking notes. And even like there's actually a great article I can put in the chat from the New York Times about how they cover presidential debates, and they always have two people so that one person's taking notes and the other one's writing the story, which is not live tweeting but kind of a similar idea, right? So that when one is writing, the other can still be focused on exactly what's going on in front of them. And that's a great tag team approach, right? If you have that luxury of having many people there at once. If it's just you, I would think seriously about doing like maybe, and you feel like you want to have the Twitter presence because you want to be part of that conversation, and I would maybe consider doing, you know, a sort of light live tweet where you're not tweeting every single thing, but maybe you're doing every third or fourth quote that you think really sticks out. And so that would be my personal thought on live tweeting. AP as an organization doesn't do that as much with our individual people. So I'm not currently doing as much of that with my own work and than I have at other organizations in the past. And I do find it's one less thing to do. That's kind of nice that I can focus a little bit more on what's in front of me, but I do definitely see the value of doing tweeting. And I don't know if you can avoid it in this day and age.
And I think you have to come into it with the mind of you're not just rewriting or copying quotes that are coming out during the debates, but you're connecting that to the content that you've covered about those issues that they're talking about as well, and you're bringing it back to content that you've covered in the past that talks about those issues. It's more of engaging with the audience instead of just putting it out there, because people can watch the debates, they can watch it on YouTube, they can listen to it, you know, on their phone when they're on the go. And so they don't really need to turn to tweets to just repeat exactly what was just said. But I think having that more in-depth perspective when live tweeting or going on there and thinking of it as engaging with people, answering their questions, and pointing them back towards the coverage that you've already completed on the issues that are being talked about, I think that's way more beneficial, and that's how it should be handled debate night.
And Lindsay put that New York Times link in the chat if anyone want to check that out. Still looking if anyone's got any other questions, any thoughts for our panelists. I'm kind of like trying to formulate a question in my mind. I hope I don't butcher this. I think it's kind of an important subject, but kind of returning to the idea of the themes that are likely to occur in this debate, and having Mike Pence and Kamala Harris and talking about women's rights with everything going on with the Supreme Court. I'm kind of like curious, like how you guys think about the way specifically the treatment might be of Kamala Harris and her presentation, and how to avoid perhaps like stepping into some kind of characterization that might be sexist. I think she's got a reputation as a prosecutor and she can ask tough questions. How do you kind of look at how she may handle this debate, and how do you cover it in a way that avoids any kind of trappings of like a stereotypical kind of image of like of a tough female figure in like an adversarial debate. I don't know who might want to take that on first. Lindsay, you want to?
Sure. I think that the typical things you hear is like angry or shrill or emotional. Those are the kinds of things that I think sometimes do get, like, when they can be associated with women, can let's say create an inaccurate or perhaps or even racist, sexist image. And I do think like we as the media, like words matter, and we should be thinking about these things, and we are all going really fast. And I think that's when, mistakes can kind of creep in a lot of ways, right? And so I think taking like a half a second at least to kind of think about it, and framing it as if this is the same kind of thing I might say for a guy, maybe rereading some language that you've seen in previous stories. Not that previous stories are perfect, but rereading some coverage and seeing like, how did we frame this when this was two guys going back and forth? And I think those kinds of things can kind of help get in a mindset, because I don't know, none of us should think we're immune from creating and from saying things in a way that is detrimental. You know what I mean? And so we should always, as much as possible, take at least a millisecond to think about how we're phrasing things.
Yeah, I say if it's a cliche, try to stay away from it. I've already heard people saying she can hold her own. What does that mean? She can hold her own. Why wouldn't she be able to with the, with the experience that she's had in the past, or words like they went toe to toe? Just, I would say just try to stay away from cliches as much as possible.
Let's see. Let's see. Okay, so I think there was a question, Sean, just about it's not too late to reserve student space in the holding room. Is that right?
Yeah, so it is not too late for students. And I don't want to classify it as a holding room, but it's a large space where you'll have all these opportunities. On the night of the debate, we'll have the TV streaming, so you'll have the live stream. You won't have the 5 to 10 second delay that you would see if you were watching it from your home. So that's a small advantage. And it will be streaming on, airing on all of the major networks. So the partners, the media partners with the Commission on Presidential Debates are the ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, CNN, and C-SPAN. And we will also and then streaming on your favorite platform.
And Sean, I was curious too, and I apologize if you said this. I was kind of like looking at questions and things over here. I don't know if you mentioned this before. We've got your email in the chat if people got questions. Is there a specific like website or something folks could go to with some of this information I can throw up in the chat also?
Yeah, debate 2020 at utah.edu. There is, in the sidebar, there's go to media and then down to media resources. So we've already uploaded some B-roll of campus, some still shots. We have our July press conference linked there, as well as some other resources. We have in the news section, so anytime that we've sent anything out, we've held a press conference or anything, that news is in that section. The really interesting thing about my side of communications and working with the media is that my job is 100%, well, not 100%, but primarily invisible. So everything that you see on that site, I probably wrote, but other people are credited. So it's a fun experience, and it's just the other side of the coin, and getting the word out.
Well, unless there's any more questions from the chat, I think I'll probably throw it back to you guys, Lindsay and Liz, just kind of talk about, just summarize again, what do you think, people should be prepared for? Any other thoughts you think would be helpful in knowing how to cover the event, cover, the reaction to the event? Anything else, even just kind of summarizing some of the key points that you guys have brought up before?
And feel free to start it off, Liz. I don't want to. Yeah. Feel free to kick it off if you'd like.
That's fine. You can start.
So for me, I think that two of the biggest things anyway are prep work and focus. Like, don't do as much prep work as humanly possible, and don't feel like you have to do everything. Find the thing that only you can do, maybe, or only your outlet can do, and do it well. Or figure out those issues that are the absolute important to you and everybody else on earth, like the virus or something else, and focus on those things. Don't try to do everything halfway and end up with sort of a mess of a story. You know what I mean? Like think of the things that you want to do and be precise about those, and go hard on those things, and don't try to spread yourself too thin. I think is one, I feel like, mistake I've made in past debate stories, is to try and cover everything and end up not really giving the reader a clear sense of anything. So find out those things, and and I think the reaction to this debate will be key too. I think that talking to real people about what they think about it is going to be good. So find those voices that you know how to find, and do your thing the best you can. A story like this, it's so it's so big, there's going to be a million different pieces of it. And so find your niche and do it well, and don't put pressure on yourself to do everything.
And I agree with what Lindsay had to say. Be sure to narrow down and just know for sure this is what I'm covering, and maybe that could expand, or you can, you know, follow up in the days leading after that when you have more time to talk about other things that you picked up during the debates. But be sure to just have that main focus of what you're covering, what your story is about, what your goal is, and what you want to get out of it. It's a huge event with a billion moving parts, but and I just said don't use cliches, and I just used a cliche, but it's an incredibly huge event, and it's easy to get just swept up in all the, you know, craziness of it and excitement of it. But just maintain your focus, and as much as possible, take your viewers, take, you know, your audience along for the ride, and be transparent about your coverage and why you're covering certain things and why you're not covering certain things. And I think you'll see a lot more positivity as a result of that coverage, and a better response as well.
And Sage had a quick question that I think is a good one. Like, what does the prep work kind of look like specifically? For me, doing some pre-writing of my story was actually a game changer. Like, stuff I already knew, like all the background stuff we already know about this race, who's running against who, all those basics, get that written ahead of time. You can even, if you're doing this by yourself, Sage, or anybody else, you can even pre-write some leads that you think might come out of it. Obviously, you're not going to put anything out there until you know what actually happens and things change and are modified. But you can pre-write a lot of things, and then you can drop in the quotes, modify as necessary, and try to keep that. If you're doing pre-writing, try to keep it as neutral as possible. But that really can help a lot if you're by yourself and you're under a deadline pressure and you're trying to get a story out. Doing as much, you know, like getting those facts ahead of time and writing them up can really help a lot to make it so you're not scrambling too much. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
I'd like to build off on all of that. If you need an expert, if you need somebody for your story, you can reach out to us. We have experts here at the University of Utah, but you can also reach out to your own experts at your own college and university. But with those requests, and to both Lindsay and Liz's points, is be specific with what you're looking for, and even submit some of the questions in your request. It's much easier for somebody like myself to find you the exact expert that you're looking for when we know what you're looking for. You don't have to give your entire pitch away or your entire story, but you know, I want to talk to somebody about this, and here are 2 or 3 of the questions I'm going to ask, and here's my deadline. It's always difficult for somebody like me to say, well, what's your deadline? And the answer is always going to be, especially for TV and radio, and it's usually right now. But if you could give a timeline of, I need it in the next hour, or I need it before 1:30, we can work with that and get you the information you need. So reach out to your own communications offices, and we're here at the University of Utah, we're a resource as well.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this very great webinar. Had some great resources, you know, in the chat. Check that, you know, that page, debate2020.utah.edu. Thank you, Gene. I saw you corrected. I accidentally put an @ there. That debate2020.utah.edu. It's been a great panel, some really good practical advice. We are recording this, so SPJ, we will get this uploaded soon. If you weren't able to stay the whole time, or if you missed this, want to check it out later, we'll have that available for you as well. And Sean Wood's email's in there as well. That's sean.wood@utah.edu. You got questions about the event as well. But
I'd like to make a caveat
please.
there. If you would like space in the Media Filing Center, you can email me. If you, to what I just talked about getting you an expert or anything like that, if you could use this email address instead, our entire team are watching this email address, and it would help me out a lot with the panic feeling I have on a daily basis right now. So it is unews, UNEWS @utah.edu.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That's our webinar. We really appreciate everyone for attending. Like I said, we'll have this uploaded soon. And thanks again to Lindsay, Liz, and Sean for helping us get ready for this very big, very historic event. Thank you, everybody, and we'll call that a day. Thank you.